Hello and welcome to this episode of Ranked Rambles. And this topic's going to be a bit broad, but primarily what inspired it was I saw someone on Reddit asking, are the channel lands too good? And it got me thinking, based on previous experiences like you'll see here, of are they too good? One thing I was going to discuss here, and it ties into it, is do we need the return of Stax pieces? Now, before anyone blows a gasket and loses their mind, what I mean is old school traditional Stax pieces. For example, what we used to see with every block set, for anyone who's relatively new or only an arena player, block sets used to be free sets. We'd have free sets on a plane with a set theme. Then as a hard reset, when we went to the next plane, there would usually be something insanely good that would counter. Good examples are when we went to Innistrad after leaving Mirrodin, where it was a heavy artifact theme, they printed Stony Silence, which shuts off all artifacts. Basically, it was the original Karn static. But then progressively we went to Feros after Innistrad, so they printed Rest in Peace as a generic answer to the graveyard deck to give us a solid answer that could deal with things there. And one thing I've noticed in particular with the short build of obviously only having a single set now on every plane, we're not seeing set strategies as much in Standard, and conversely we're just resulting in good stuff piles. Best example of this is currently the fact that Rakdos is literally just updating itself every set with just the best and black mythics and red mythics that come out. Now, that poses its own problems, but it's something that obviously we didn't see. Another example is when we finished Khans and went into Origins, there was a lot of monocolored support and a lot of multicolored hate. That was obviously to get around the triple effects there. Triple land obviously built around triple colors that were built into Khans. We're not seeing that obviously because we're seeing diverse things. For example, last set we had a food subsection. Now we have lost Caverns of Ixalan spoilers just beginning, and we have 4 different strategies. We have Explore, we have Cascade, that's even more busted Cascade, which is another point we can discuss later. But my issue, I think, and why we need probably better Stax pieces like this is it's part of the escalation. For example, the channel lands, for those who don't know, are legendary lands from Neon Dynasty that have an activated ability for channel where you discard them and you get that effect. The red one makes 2 spirits, the black one mills free and returns a creature or planeswalker. The white one does 4 damage to an attacking or blocking creature. The blue one bounces a enchantment, creature or planeswalker. And the green one destroys an artifact or enchantment or land, or non-basic land, and lets the opponent get any basic land type out their deck. The big issue with these is these are basically the answer cards, so the things that get you around Stax pieces and lock pieces. They are uncounterable, undiscardable, basically you can't hit them with Fort Caesars, and if they aren't needed for that set, for example if that matchup they're not needed, they are lands to boost your efficiency. And this is where the problem is. The trade-off before was that these cards you would see like Stony Silence, Rest in Peace, they were prominently sideboard cards that would come in to hate out the decks in matches 2 or 3. Now we're at a point where you can run mainboard hate and deal with it that way. Best example I would say of this is one of my primary strategies for dealing with the Devotion decks was to put in the Alpine Moon and put down Nikvos, but now they're running like a playset of their Besajus because it's not a big deal to them. So obviously that shuts down any hate of there. You could Leyline Binding or get rid of their Khan with like a Leyline Binding, but then Besaju hits that. Or the control decks can now bounce your hate pieces with a land that can't be countered. And ultimately that's what's kind of concerning me about this is we're at an imbalance where answers are significantly more powerful than the locks or hate pieces. And obviously I think we're seeing that with the effect of Seal from Reality. Now, for those of you who don't know, Seal from Reality is a March of the Machine enchantment. It's basically a 3-mana Oblivion Ring effect that has now got Ward free on it to protect it from being targeted by effects like Besage. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think we need to see a strong return to hate pieces. We need basically Notion Thief on a land, or color hosing enchantments that have Ward now to protect them from the answers, which are way more efficient, which is then going to lead back to a cycle of more and more and less if it, you know, it swings and roundabouts, as they say. But ultimately, I don't think the channel lands are too good. I think they are excessively good. Obviously, they try to balance it out by saying they're legendary, so they can't play multiples, but they're basically a freehold spell in your hand. There is a lot to be said about those channel lands. But I don't think they are ban-worthy in any sense of the word. I think that we're going to just see a wave of more efficient cards. But then, thinking about it, my point was, without our block build structure, there's no way of telling in advance for the designers what's going to become the prominent deck. Honestly, we haven't seen anything insanely prominent of a specific strategy for a while. I mean, Rakdos midrange is basically the best in standard. We had Esper Connive, or Esper Legends. And yeah, so what I'm saying is, it's going to be very hard for them to design these effects with the current design philosophy. Going back to our first example, they could put a Stony Silence effect into Innistrad because they knew we were coming off the back of literally 3 sets of artifact-themed decks. So they didn't need to focus on what artifact deck they were specifically handing out. They knew artifact decks would be the most prevalent thing. Now, anyone who remembers that time, I was not there at the time, but I've been told from friends who were that it was literally hell on earth to play Magic at that point. But if you look at our last 3 sets we've had here, we had Wilds of Eldraine, where we saw a huge surge of food, adventures, and fairies. I'm trying to remember the other themes that were in that one set. Then we jump back further to March of the Machine and Aftermath. I'm going to include them together. We had legendary matters, battles, we had Praetors with flip abilities, so Saga effects, Sagas in Eldraine as well. And then you go back further than that to All Will Be One, we had Toxic for 1 set. And, you know, if you look at that, it pretty much puts us in a place where it's nearly impossible for people to design a hate card, because what is going to be the prominent strategy from there? It's literally just going to be a pile of efficient cards. I mean, yeah. And I think that's an issue we have now with the design space in general, is because we don't have a set block of cards to introduce definitive strategies for an entire year. Plus, we're seeing basically just good stuff piles being the best. I mean, one of the most prominent strategies for a while, I think, was literally a Reanimator strategy with Atraxa, or a way to ramp out Atraxa. Yeah, literally it's 4-color ramp to get Atraxa, because she was the best thing in standard. Now, obviously, from a lore perspective, I guess it makes sense because they want to, you know, explore more worlds, introduce more sets, not lock into one thing. But ultimately, it has to be addressed that we could just be seeing a situation where we're never going to see effective hate-out pieces again, because designers won't be able to adjust to what a good standard effect will be. For example, Ixalan spoilers have begun now. And looking at it, I can't tell you what would be the prominent thing. We have literally a Cascade effect. We have a... Oh yeah, we also have a Cast from Exile effect, which is prevalent for all the other strategies. But yeah, it's... I suppose as well, thinking about it from Wizards design, maybe they don't want to encourage people to draft to build an entire deck, to then have it immediately hated out when the next set comes out. But But again, it's something we have to address is, if we are just going to constantly improve the level of our answers, for example, like we've done here with the channel lands and other effects like that, we're going to end up with either two scenarios. We either have to bring in super powered Stax pieces with protection, for example, like a 1-mana card that literally says, you know, this land can't be played, and give it protection or ward 5 or something stupid. Or, you know, we're going to end up with something, for example, like a color hosing spell, like a board wipe that just says, well, a best example, I'd probably say something like a Blasphemous Sack that works only on your opponent's creatures, if a creature strategy is prominent. It's interesting at the same time as being very concerning, I should say. Ultimately, I'm not opposed to the new structure and the better answers. I think that I should say that I'm probably not the best person to discuss this. One of my previous modern decks I used to love playing was Mono Red Prison back in the day. So I had plenty of turn 0 concessions where I ramped out a Blood Moon on turn 0 or something like that. And that, in hindsight, was pretty degenerate and stupid. But it ultimately does lead us to this point of, if our answers are going to be as efficient as we've seen them, are we going to have better answers for the answers? Well, not better answers for the answers, sorry. Are we going to need highly more protective hate pieces to remove problem strategies from standard and other formats? I genuinely think we will see that happen. I think Seal from the Exist, I'm going to call it, and in 5 years someone could tell me I was an idiot, but I do believe Seal from Existence is an indication of the way things are going to go. Like, we are going to see cards that are naturally now just built incidentally with Ward to protect them from the answers. But not every card, for example. I think it will be specific cards that are designed to hate out stuff. So, for example, we might see a Thalia that has Ward to protect her, or we'll see a protection from certain removal color card that, you know, hates out cards from graveyard, like Sanctifier. But yeah, it ultimately does. So, ultimately, to sum up the question here, I don't think the channel lands are too good. I think they're incredibly efficient, good in what they do, and it's really fun to see them. And genuinely, I do like them, but they're not too good, but I am worried of what they represent. I do think that eventually, if design philosophy doesn't go the way I suspect, we could end up with the ban hammer coming on them. Anyway, that was our initial topic. The other one I wanted to discuss real quickly here in regards to that is, well, we have some Ixalan spoilers, and they have introduced a mechanic called Discover. Now, for those of you who don't know, Discover is basically whenever this creature enters the battlefield, this permanent enters the battlefield, if it was cast, Discover, which basically means you exile cards until you find a card with converted mana cost less than the Discover value. So, for example, Discover 4 is basically Cascade on a Bloodbraid Elf. Now, the big difference and why it's causing a bit of controversy with some of the friends I know is this is balanced out by the fact that it says you may not cast the card if you don't want to, you could just put it in your hand. So essentially, what this reads as is Cascade plus, if you are lucky enough to hit a counter spell or something you don't want to cast in the moment, like a board wipe, just tuck it into your hand, mate, and you can hold on to it for later. Again, this feels like an escalation, as we were discussing earlier. I don't think, from the cards I've seen so far, that it seems that busted. For example, I don't see anything that's going to immediately jump into a Rhino deck or something. Like, I'm pretty sure, and if this video comes out after the full spoiler season has been revealed and I am completely wrong, I really hope Wizards aren't stupid enough to print something like a 2-drop with Discover 1, because that would just literally break Modern in half. I think we could just literally see Living Den and Rhino's decks just become the unstoppable force. I just want to draw attention to this game real quick. So if you don't notice this, this was a no-win blue-black control deck that I'm literally going to win here because they are literally going to not have anything to cast. They are going to draw their entire deck before they kill me. And for those of you wondering, this I think was a rank up or close to rank up match. This is why I went this hard on it. But I just want to draw your attention to the end here, because our opponent doesn't understand their own cards. That's why it's hilarious. So they have us dead to rights here, because they can just activate the Ice Giant land. So we're going to play the Fable of the Mirror Breaker here, make a bunch of blockers, try to live. They unfortunately have been able to grab one of our board wipes, which we'll see them cast in a second. So in response, we will Assassin's Trophy their land. Now they think that if they animate it, they'll activate the ward. Fortunately, it doesn't work like that because ward is when you initially target. So our opponent literally drew out of their deck before they found a kill option. Oh, this modern is like, this control deck is the worst kind of control decks. I just wanted to point that out because that was such a long and fun match. Well, fun by the fact of, haha, literally it lived up to the meme of control players don't know how to kill an opponent before they end up killing themselves. And yeah. But in discussion, aside from that, I think this is a point of escalation. So this cascade, this improved cascade mechanic, Discover, it's now in the wild. It's been introduced. So what I think we could see is maybe in Modern Horizons 3 we'll see Discover 2 cards. I think that obviously any mechanic that exists is fair game in Modern Horizons. Now I don't know the design philosophy ways it's going to go, if when what was designed and who did what now. But yes, I do think that it's going to potentially be interesting, to put it that way. I don't think it's going to break standard in half having a Cascade deck. I think we'll just see like aggro decks use it to grab 2 creatures, maybe stick a creature in hand to protect from removal. I don't think anything I've seen so far really changes the current standard or Pioneer meta. I still think that Rakdos is still going to be dominant. I don't think that green is going to get... It doesn't feel like green's got anything insane coming its way. But I could be wrong. As you'll see later in this video, I was really off the mark when I suddenly realized that now the green decks can run up the beanstalk themselves to draw additional cards. Basically it's their cure as 5 to 8. They can also now add in the turtle from the legendary turtle from Eldraine that gives them the ability to get back their Nickfosses if they've milled it or you found a way to destroy it. And this is ultimately what I'm saying. We are seeing more efficient answers. We now have legendary creatures that return permanents, so they can return the stuff that's been destroyed. We have more efficient removal, but where do we go from there? So, to summarize this very long, very rambly version of this talk, I think Discover is going to be very interesting to watch. I'm going to keep my eye on every card that comes out. I ultimately think that it will push... I don't think it's going to break anything in standard, but I've been very wrong before. I completely wrote off Fable of the Mirror Breaker as a terrible card. And, yep, I got shown up big time with that. But yes, as we currently stand, I think that we are seeing an imbalance currently in Magic, where we have more efficient threats and answers, but no efficient lockdown. For those of you who want to know about that is, strategies, for example, that are... well, strategies that are hard to interact with. For example, I'm going to bring it up again because it's the bane of my existence, Mono Green Devotion. We have all of the stuff that we would normally old school modern use to interact with that type of thing, you know, blood moon effects, you know, hate enchantments, and all these things. We literally now have a whole slew of answers in the channel lands, for an example, that are uncounterable, can't be fort seized or discarded unless randomly, and also just have probably some of the most efficient things in efficient removal that cost reduces itself, that we could be used as a land and played main board. So I think we're just tipping on the scales, and we're going to see either super efficient Stax pieces come out of nowhere, or we're going to see even more efficient protected lock pieces come out of nowhere. Also, I want to call this guy out. I'm sorry, dude, but I'm going to say this. I want to put this out. Hornet, the dude here, the control player. Bro, I know you're salty roping, but when this happened, I was like, thank you, Jesus. We don't have to go out through a whole game of him drawing his whole deck and not finding a kill spell or a way to win the game. Oh my word, it was so hilarious. Yeah, I just... Literally, it made me laugh at this point, because I was just literally there smiling going, yay, I don't have to suffer against the control player anymore. Yep, they're on under 10 minutes. That's how long this match has been, and how long I have rambled for. But yeah, so that's the end of this ranked ramble. The last match here is a Mono Green Devotion, where I show you the turtle interaction, how they completely hose us. Again, let me know what you think. Do you think that we have 2 good answers or 2 good threats? Do you think we need stronger stack/hate out pieces in the future? Or do you think that the balance is currently really good and we should keep it the same? Thanks for watching. Please enjoy this last match here.
Reload!